I'm Richard Lewis reporting for cadred.org, and I'm here with the person that's going to be doing all of the shoutcasting of the Alienware Starcraft 2 tournament, Mr. Totalbiscuit. So, first question, how have you been finding it so far here?
Oh, it's been a lot of fun, honestly. Really well organised tournament. Should be a good laugh. A lot of money on the line for the players right here. It's a shame that we dropped a couple as we went in, unfortunately. So we're down to 6 players right now for this Invitational. But all that means is they're getting to play an awful lot of games between each other. And we see their sort of meta game advance as we go through the tournament, as they adapt to each other's styles. It's really fun.
Well, of course, one of the players that dropped out was the only Zerg player that was going to be here. Yeah. How does that impact on the tournament as a whole? I mean, is it a bit disappointing in your opinion, or is it something that not that important really?
Well, from a spectator's perspective, and even from a commentator's perspective, we all like variety. We all want all 3 races to be in there. And right now there's the situation where Zerg is considered to be less competitive than, say, Protoss, and we've got a Protoss-dominated tournament today. We've got 4 Protoss players and only 2 Terran players. So we do have 2 of the best Terran players in the world, which does help matters, although we also have some amazing Protoss players. So I would like to see some more Zerg, if I'm totally honest, but life happens. There's not a lot you can really do about that, and maybe when the game balance starts to shift a little bit more in Zerg's favour, we're going to see bigger showings from the Zerg in Europe.
Well, the Protoss being overpowered is a recurring theme, a lot of people talking about it. Do you think there's anything specifically, I mean, if you were in charge and you could click your fingers and fix it, what would you do to kind of redress the balance? What do you think needs to be done to make the game kind of more competitive across all races?
Well, I think the real problem with it right now is that you've got a game that isn't all that developed, so people will throw accusations of imbalance, underpowered all over the place, and it's a little bit difficult to really assess because, say, with StarCraft Brood War, you had years and years of this metagame slowly evolving, and obviously minor tweaks here and there, and it took a long time to get the game into a sort of situation where people were really comfortable with the balance. And even then, the balance is addressed and related to various things within the game, like, say, the way that Dragoons handle within the game. They're actually really hard to control. They have very odd pathing and things like that. So that's actually become part of the balance over the course of a decade. I mean, that's a long time for a game to be around and actually survive with a competitive scene. So when it comes to me, I tend to try and stay out of the balance discussion as much as possible. It's very popular to sort of hate on Protoss right now and say, oh, Protoss have too strong an early game, or Protoss can stop micromanagement by using force fields, which is a fair point, certainly, but I think that it's a kind of a bit of a wood for the trees kind of situation where people they're tunnel visioning in on this one thing, and really I don't think it's all that healthy to really go in and just say, oh well, all the tournaments now are completely invalid and all these guys playing Protoss are invalid because they're a little bit overpowered or whatever. So I try and stay out of it as much as possible, but I'm a kind of a wait and see kind of guy in that way. But I think that half of the problem maybe with Zerg right now is maybe attitude. I mean, you've got one of the best, in fact probably the best Western Zerg player in the world, Idra. He's very, very negative about the way things tend to go down, and
he's quite a negative person in general. I believe
he is a little bit, yeah, he is a little bit. He's known for his legendary bad manner, and he's got an attitude on him, which is good. You know, it's great to have a personality like that, and he's highly skilled, incredibly skilled, amazing player. The problem is he's so negative about things. You might have heard of the incident at the recent MLG event where he ended up quitting out of a game against a hallucinated army that wasn't actually there. So that's how negative he really is versus Protoss, and I think it might be having a little bit of a knock-on effect. But aside from that, kind of a wait-and-see thing.
Yeah, well, it would be remiss of me if I wasn't to ask your thoughts about who's going to win and the reasons why. I mean, you're the expert on that. I mean, where do you see the tournament? A lot of people are talking up Nanoir and how well he did at MLG. I mean, where do you see it going?
Well, right now, the thing I like the most about it is it's such a balanced tournament because we've got a small group of players who are all excellent. I mean, Hazelob's just come off a win at the recent UGC event where he walked away with a good €3,500 prize pool. And bear in mind, he beat one of the best Terran in Europe, Cloud, to get there, as well as a couple of other players like Goody, who was actually supposed to be here, but of course was ill, so he wasn't able to get here. Naniwar obviously really good, but we just saw him go up against Soke and he actually lost. Naniwar got very aggressive, and Soke, actually a very cool-headed player, very efficient, was able to deal with it very well in a Protoss versus Protoss. But then again, you've also got 2 amazing Terran players. You've got Show, who comes off a great performance at DreamHack, and you've got Select, who is constantly doing well in tournaments. So I think this is one of the most well-balanced tournaments. The only player I'd say here is maybe a little bit behind the curve is Dignitas's newer first edition Bling, who only just came onto the team, and we're not seeing him perform amazingly well here, but this is one of his first live events, so you can't blame the guy. This is a valuable tournament experience for him. So really, it's all up in the air right now. Hazelwobbs has been doing really well, but then again, you've got a favourite like Naniwa, who comes off an amazing win at MLG, and is now losing to Soke and things like that. So it's very, very balanced, and that's great. I'm hoping to see, honestly, Protoss versus Terran final, because obviously we like the variety in there, and certainly Show and Select are more than capable of making that happen.
Well, what about, I mean, you know, if Bling, it's kind of weird. I saw the game against Select where he actually came out on top in that, and I know it's a group stage game and don't read too much into it, but I mean, that's a huge win for a guy at his first live event, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the problem with Bling right now is he's going up against a lot of Protoss players, and obviously he's a Protoss player himself, and he seems a little bit on edge when doing Protoss v Protoss, and his PvP doesn't seem to be as good as his PvT. And beating Select is an achievement in and of itself. Select is an amazing player, but I think that his lack of real life tournament experience as opposed to online is going to hurt him here, and it hurts every player when they start playing in live environments. There's a lot of pressure there. It's a completely different dynamic, so we'll see how he copes with it, and it'll be valuable for him nonetheless.
Well, the other thing I want to ask you about, because it's a little bit weird, you know, I think there's a lot of big names out there in shoutcasting when it comes to StarCraft 2 especially, and you know, you're right up there with them. Is there any sort of inter-rivalry? Because, you know, everyone talks about Day 9, and he seems to be everywhere whenever we're talking about StarCraft 2. I mean, do you guys feel like the chase in Park? Is it just, you know, professional courtesy? How do you guys interact with each other?
Well, I think there's a lot of positivity actually between the casters at the moment. There isn't an awful lot of aggression between caster versus caster. It's often fan base of one caster versus fan base of another caster. It's generally not encouraged. Day 9 is looked up to by everybody, and that's the way that it should be, because he dedicates a large portion of his life to esports in a selfless manner, and he's very likable. He's very hard to not get along with. He's a very positive and genuine individual. So there's never any problems with Day 9. I mean, there's been a bit of tit for tat between, say, In Control and myself that you might have heard about the state of the game. But
that sort of was the next thing I was coming
into that one.
Yeah, if you could elaborate on that for us.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to elaborate on, because as to where it started, nobody really knows. It's just In Control likes to riff on people, and that's fine. He's riffed on a lot of different casters in the past, although he's become a lot more humble lately, because he took a bit of a pounding when it came to the NASL organization, and he said a lot of things that kind of didn't happen, and NASL is obviously doing it much better now, but he's dialed it back, he's become more respectful, and of course you can only applaud a guy for being able to do that. You know, that's one of the manliest things you can do, really, is to admit, hey, you know, I messed up a little bit. But aside from that, really, it's not a major thing. I mean, I'm involved in the NASL as well, and there's no problem with myself and In Control in that regard, so, you know, I'm not too concerned about that. But I mean, really, the only caster tit for tat that goes on is sort of between the smaller casters who are jockeying for position. I think we've got a very saturated scene right now where everybody wants to cast, and there's only a few that will really get the regular major event gigs. And I don't think there's a lot of competition there. We all kind of know each other, and we get along really well, and we're always looking for opportunities to team up and things like that. So we've all got the same goal in mind. We all want to make esports bigger, so it doesn't make any sense for us to fight.
Well, sort of just to wrap it up, final question. You mentioned a little bit there about esports being bigger. A lot of people in the industry now are looking at StarCraft 2 as the title that is going to be the game that finally sort of pushes it out into the mainstream. It attracts a lot of media attention. It's got a prominent stand in which is Britain's biggest technology expo. I mean, do you think StarCraft 2 is the stepping stone towards mainstream recognition?
Oh, it certainly could be. I think it's a very appealing game to a wide demographic of people. You can like it on a highly analytical level, where you're focusing on stats and build orders in the metagame and the psychology of the players, and there are people that watch the match and take notes and things like that, and they like analytical casters. And then you've got the people that like it on a very casual level. They like it because it's a high-paced strategy game. It's easy to understand the aim of StarCraft 2. It makes more sense in people's mind. It kind of looks like a sports match, because you see the flow back and forth across the arena or the field, whatever you want to call it, and it sort of clicks in your head. It's like, oh yeah, this is kind of like a sport, isn't it? So I think that really, really helps. I think the only concern people have got is that StarCraft 2 is eclipsing all other esports right now, and other esports are trying to launch off the back of it, but they're not having the success that StarCraft 2 is. So while StarCraft 2 could push it into the mainstream, it could also push out everything else, which could be problematic. But I think that over the next few years, we're going to see a lot more people turning to streaming online as opposed to watching television, and IPTV is going to be a much bigger deal. And as a result of that, it's not going to be a case of, oh, we see televised StarCraft. We're just going to see more streamed StarCraft, and more people are going to start watching streamed content as opposed to watching televised content. And that's really where it's going to get big, and you already see it with events like DreamHack pulling in record numbers. YouTube's just launched this live streaming service. That's going to pull in even huger numbers than anyone else really can, because they've got such an installed user base. So I think StarCraft 2 is going to do it exceptionally well. It'll certainly take esports into a position where people recognize what esports is. I hope it takes a few other games along with it, but I'm not convinced, not at the current state of things. I think another title's going to have to come along that is equally friendly to the eye.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Very thorough. It's a real pleasure to talk to you finally as well, and thanks for taking the time to talk to CanadaRed.org. And all the people out there, do stay tuned to the website. We are going to have more video content coming your way. Some interviews with some of the players. I think we've got one with Bling coming up as well, so keep an eye out for that. So do stay tuned. We'll have all the information from here. Gadget Show live, Alienware Starcraft 2 competition at the Birmingham NEC. Brilliant, man.